Chapter 33:14. As soon as the silver needle entered his body, he immediately discovered that the silver needle was highly toxic. Thus, he immediately used his origin energy to forcefully expel the poison from his body. However, he was shocked to find that the poison seemed to be able to adhere to his yuanli. The more he used his yuanli to force it out, the faster the poison circulated in his body. In a short period of time, it had already invaded his body. Under such circumstances, he could only stop the flow of yuanli in his body. Otherwise, he would only die if this continued. However, even after he did so, the speed of the poison circulating in his body only slowed down a little. However, it was worsening his body step by step. He didn't know much about poison, but he could determine how powerful this poison was. It could take his life at any time. Bewitching's lips slowly curled into a devilish smile. It seemed like their plan had succeeded. Bailey Hongzhuang laid down in relief and said to Ziren and Shengguan Yingying, "Beichen and I are temporarily unable to fight. I'll leave the rest of Guijun to you guys." Shengguan Yingying and Ziren were stunned when they heard this. However, the two of them quickly reacted. It seemed like the result of this battle wasn't what they saw on the surface. The real winners were Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching. Guijun also realized that something was wrong at this moment. He couldn't help but ask, "Big brother, what's wrong with you?" However, Gao Hanshun didn't answer Guijun at all. Under such circumstances, Guijun gradually realized that Gao Hanshun's face had turned purple. His pupils couldn't help but shrink. "Poison? Big brother, you've been poisoned." Guijun was completely dumbfounded at this moment. He had never thought that his big brother would actually be poisoned. If that was the case, wouldn't the situation be extremely bad? As soon as Guijun finished speaking, the spectating cultivators finally understood the real situation. Suddenly, the way everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching changed. None of them had noticed when Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching had poisoned them. Most importantly, Gao Hanshun was already at the 8th level of the Purple Realm. What kind of poison could cause Gao Hanshun to fall into such a state? Poison had always been something that cultivators were very wary of. However, after reaching such a high level of cultivation, ordinary poison would not be able to affect them at all. However, the poison that Bailey Hongzhuang and Gao Hanshun had used on Gao Hanshun was truly terrifying. Bang! In the next second, Gao Hanshun's figure suddenly fell backward. Guijun immediately supported Gao Hanshun, and a panicked look quickly appeared on his face. He shouted loudly, "Big brother, how are you?" Gao Hanshun only looked at Guijun, and the purple color on his face became more and more intense. He said, "Highly toxic poison. I'm afraid I won't make it." He had never thought that he would fall into the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching like this. They were just a few newcomers who had just arrived at Penglai Island from the outside world. How could he fall into their hands again and again? In the end, he even lost his life. He couldn't accept it. However, he knew his own body's condition very well. If he didn't have the antidote, he would die. Obviously, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching would never give him the antidote. Chapter 33:15. At the same time, when Ziren, Shengguan Yingying, Baisher, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai all walked towards Guijun, Gao Hanshun could no longer cause any trouble, so it would be a piece of cake for the two of them, and the three beasts to deal with Guijun. As he watched Ziren and the others approach, Guijun's face turned pale. He could not help but ask, "What are you trying to do?" Ziren chuckled. "Do you even need to ask?" A sense of fear rose in Guijun's heart. He simply could not imagine that the three of them would lose their lives in the hands of these people. He could not help but feel regret. If he had known this would happen, they would have left immediately after the auction. Then, none of this would have happened. Unfortunately, they had gone through so much trouble to find these fellows. They never thought that they would lose their lives in the process. At the thought of this, Guijun did not hesitate to flee towards the back. It was impossible for him to fight them head-on. This was the only way for him to survive. When Ziren had already guessed Guijun's thoughts. Therefore, he had immediately chased after Guijun the moment he had fled. He would not give him any chance to escape. Everyone could not help but sigh at the sight of this. The reversal of the ending had exceeded everyone's expectations. The show is over. Let's go. A smile appeared on Long Yanwei's face. His judgment had been correct. These two little fellows had left a backup plan. Zihua raised his eyebrows and a trace of doubt appeared in his eyes. Are we going to leave just like that? Aren't we going to talk to them? Based on their current situation, if we were to approach them rashly, I'm afraid that they would feel hostile towards us. It's better to wait until their injuries have healed before we talk to them. The effect would be better. Long Yanwei smiled. Hearing this, Zihua could not help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching. He nodded. You're right. Xiren and the others had chased after Guijun very quickly. This was because Guijun no longer had any will to fight. All he wanted to do was to escape. When Xiren and Shangguan Yingying returned, the four of them looked at each other and smiled. They had given it their all. Fortunately, the result was as they had expected. The four of them kept the Cosmos pouches on Gao Hanchuan's team of 3. After making sure that they did not leave anything behind, they left the matter to Penglai Island's guards to deal with. Inside the inn, when Xiren and Shangguan Yingying looked at the severely injured Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching, their faces full of worry. How do you feel? Are your injuries serious? Bewitching waved his hand. A few broken bones and some internal injuries. It's not a big deal. I'll recover after a few days of rest. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. We won't die. However, it's true that we'll need to rest for a while. Looking at Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang's nonchalant expressions, when Xiren and Shangguan Yingying felt helpless. However, they were often injured so they were already used to it. It seems that we'll have to stay on Penglai Island for a while. You guys should rest first. The two of us will also be going back to rest. Xiren smiled faintly. Although his and Shangguan Yingying's injuries were not as serious as Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching's, they were still injured. In the next few days, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others stayed in the inn to recuperate until their injuries were completely healed. Chapter 33:16. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 checked Gao Hanchuan's Qingkuan bag, but when they saw the things inside, they couldn't help but feel disappointed. Logically speaking, as the 3 leaders of the heaven-shaking faction, Gao Hanchuan's group should have a lot of wealth, but when they checked, they found that there was nothing valuable inside. There weren't many treasures, and the number of spirit stones was also very small, which was very different from what they had imagined. In any case, they are the leaders of the heaven-shaking faction. I didn't expect that after so many years, they would end up in such a state. TSK. Xiren couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. He originally thought that he had slaughtered 3 little fat sheep, but he didn't expect that they were so poor. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at the things inside the Qingkuan bag, and couldn't help but say, it seems that the news we heard before was not wrong at all. The development of the heaven-shaking faction is not as good as before. In order to keep the heaven-shaking faction alive, Gao Hanchuan's group has spent almost all their wealth. A starving camel is still bigger than a horse. The things in this guy's Qingkuan bag are not even as much as I am. Shangguan Yingying shrugged her shoulders. She originally had a trace of expectation, but now it seemed that she was thinking too much. Bewitching took out 2 pieces of the map fragment from Gao Hanchuan's Qingkuan bag, and a smile slowly appeared on his face. Although we didn't get anything else, at least this map fragment is still here. This is already the most important thing. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 looked at each other and smiled. The reason why they took the risk to deal with Gao Hanchuan's group was because of this map fragment. The 4th map fragment is really in Gao Hanchuan's hands. Our judgment was not wrong at all. Xiren's eyes were brimming with pride. His divine prophecy was so accurate. Bailey Hongzhuang took out the other 2 pieces of the map from her arms. They found that Gao Hanchuan had already dealt with these pieces of the map, so the 4 pieces could be directly pieced together. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 pieced the 4 map fragments together, a surprising scene occurred. They saw that the pattern on the map seemed to flow and change in an instant. The mountain range constantly squirmed, becoming completely different from what they had seen before. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching couldn't help but look at each other. It seemed that the map fragment was more complicated than they had imagined. How on earth was this made? I've never heard of such a wriggling map. Shen Guanying's eyes widened. This scene was beyond her knowledge. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two's expressions were no better than Shen Guanying's. They had never heard of such a scene before. Soon, the map fragments merged into one, as if it had never been torn apart. Facing such a completed map, everyone was a little dumbfounded. Looks like Bewitching and your team's luck isn't ordinary. There's an 80 to 90% chance that there's a huge treasure behind this, Xiren said. Immediately, the four of them moved closer to the map to take a look. They wanted to know where the map was pointing to. However, after taking a look, the four of them were still confused. The map fragment we saw before clearly pointed to the outside world, but I've never heard of any of the locations on this map. Chapter 33:17. Do you guys know where this is? Bewitching and the other two looked at it carefully for a while before shaking their heads. We don't know. I've never seen any of the names on this map before. Also, this terrain doesn't seem to be similar to the Shengxian continent. Could it be that this map is referring to Penglai Island? Xiren was confused. Bewitching shook his head. There is an ocean drawn on this map, but it doesn't match the terrain of Penglai Island. There is no island drawn on this map at all. Then where is this place? Could it be the extreme north or the extreme east? Perhaps there is something similar to Penglai Island there? Shen Guanying said whimsically. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's deep black phoenix eyes flashed with a light of thought. This is not impossible, but the possibility is not high. As far as I know, other than the extreme south where there is an existence like Penglai Island, there doesn't seem to be anything special about the other places. So it seems that it will be very difficult for us to find the treasure on this map? Xiren sighed. He was originally full of interest to search for the treasure. He didn't expect that even with the map, they couldn't even find a place on the map. At this time, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly noticed a row of small words at the bottom right of the map. Without breaking through to the purple realm and above, it is impossible to know the location of this place. Bailey Hongzhuang read out these words, but the confusion in her eyes became even more intense. Why is this place related to cultivation? Bewitching picked up the map and looked at the row of kids carefully. His expression became complicated. Could it be that different cultivation levels lead to different maps? After all, when they first saw the map, they felt that the terrain on it was very familiar. Now that the four pieces of the map were pieced together, they were not familiar with it at all. If that was the case, then perhaps the map they were looking at now was not the same as the real map. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and said, maybe that is the case, but this map is really mysterious. If that's the case, then we will know when we break through to the purple realm and above? Xiren's eyes lit up. Compared to the hopeless situation before, at least they could see hope now. This was very good. It's useless to think about this now. We can only wait until we break through to the purple realm and above. Shen Guanying spread her hands. She originally wanted to search for the treasure right now, but she didn't expect that there was a minimum requirement. With their current cultivation levels, they couldn't even determine the location of the map. And isn't the most important thing now? Bailey Hongzhuang quickly figured it all out, a light smile appearing on her face. She had to make a trip back after the Demon Tower. At least she didn't have to let her family continue to worry. If her family was interested, it would be a good choice for them to come to Penglai Island to cultivate together. After all, the resources here could help cultivators improve even more. Chapter 33:18. Bewitching, you and Hongzhuang's injuries are almost healed, right? When Xiren asked, if there are no problems, we can set off for the magic tower. Bewitching nodded. We are fine now, we can set off at any time. Then let's set off later, we have stayed here long enough. Okay. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three packed up their things, they were ready to set off for Penglai Island. However, just as they were about to leave, a figure blocked their path. Seeing the sudden appearance of this unfamiliar figure, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two could not help but frown. They did not know where this uninvited guest came from, and they could not tell whether he was a friend or a foe. Are you all preparing to leave Penglai Island? Long Yanwei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three who were heading to the dock and a kind smile appeared on his face. Ever since he saw the battle between Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three that day, he had already made up his mind to find a way to keep the four of them in Penglai Palace. It would be a real pity if such a talent were to slip away right in front of him like this. However, the four of them were seriously injured at that time, so he did not disturb them. Today, he rushed over as soon as he heard the news that the four of them had left the inn. He did not expect them to be preparing to leave Penglai Island. Hearing Long Yanwei's question, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's eyes could not help but show a hint of vigilance. They had been staying in the inn for the past few days and had not come out. Today, they had just left, and this person had come looking for them. He must have been paying attention to them, otherwise, he would not be so clear about their situation. "Who are you? Why are you looking for us?" Bewitching asked. Noticing the vigilant look on Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's faces, Long Yanwei could not help but smile and explain. "Don't worry, I have no ill intentions." However, Long Yanwei's explanation was not convincing to Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. "Let me introduce myself. I am Long Yanwei from Penglai Palace. The purpose of my visit this time is to recruit you into Penglai Palace." As soon as these words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three could not help but be shocked. Their vigilance weakened a little, but it still did not dissipate. "I happened to see your previous battle. To be honest, I admire geniuses like you. If you can join Penglai Palace, you will definitely have a better development. I wonder if you are interested in joining Penglai Palace?" Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three looked at each other. According to their understanding, there were many cultivators who wanted to become a member of Penglai Palace. As long as one became a cultivator of Penglai Palace, one would undoubtedly have an additional layer of protection when walking on Penglai Island. Ordinary cultivators would not dare to find trouble with Penglai Palace's disciples. If they are not Bewitching Palace, they are. Of course they are they are? They go out. Them. Addition. I don't think we should go. Bewitching thought for a moment and said their decision. Chapter 33:19. Long Yanwei was originally very confident that as long as he extended an olive branch, no one would refuse. However, Bewitching had only considered it for a few seconds before rejecting it. Even Long Yanwei could not come back to his senses for a moment. The Penglai Palace was the strongest force on Penglai Island. Although it was usually called the Three Great Forces along with the 100 Flowers Gate and the Crimson Moon Sect, everyone knew that the Penglai Palace was the most powerful existence among them. One could tell from the fact that the Penglai Island and the Penglai Palace had the same name. Usually, many cultivators would sharpen their minds to join the Penglai Palace. If someone was willing to extend an olive branch, everyone would be grateful. However, he had personally come to recruit the other party and was directly rejected. He looked at the four little fellows in front of him and saw that the four little fellows had calm expressions. They did not reject an excellent development at all. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two supported Bewitching's approach. Currently, they were not in the mood to join other forces. After the trip to the demonic tower, they would have to return. As for when they would return to Penglai Island, even they did not know. At this moment, they would not be able to do anything at all if they joined. It was better not to waste time. "Are you guys really not joining?" Long Yanwei could not help but ask again. Bewitching nodded. "We really don't plan to join." Facing the other party's expressionless face, Long Yanwei was speechless. Could it be that their Penglai Palace's position on Penglai Island had been declining during this period of time? Why? After thinking about it, Long Yanwei could not help but ask the reason. He really could not think of a reason for the other party's rejection. Originally, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three still had some doubts about Long Yanwei's true identity. However, looking at Long Yanwei's expression at this moment, they no longer doubted him. Speaking of which, they knew in their hearts that they had indeed rejected an excellent opportunity. However, with their current situation, they had no choice but to do so. "We need to make a trip back." Bewitching did not intend to explain. However, after seeing Long Yanwei's sincere appearance, he still gave the reason. However, After listening to Bewitching's words, Long Yanwei did not recover for a moment. Make a trip back to the outside world? Not bad. You don't plan to stay on Penglai Island anymore. Long Yanwei frowned. If the other party did not plan to stay on Penglai Island, it was normal for them to reject him. With your current cultivation, you can only develop better if you stay on Penglai Island. Why are you in such a hurry to go back? When we first came to Penglai Island, we left without saying goodbye. Our family must be very worried about our current situation, so we decided to go back. After Long Yanwei found out the reason, he was completely speechless. Just because of such a reason, the other party refused to join the Penglai Palace? No one would believe such a thing even if he told them about it. As long as you join the Penglai Palace, our palace can send messages on your behalf. Therefore, this is not a problem for you at all. Moreover, you can save a lot of time, Long Yanwei said. Chapter 33:20. What do you think? Long Yanwei could not help but ask again when he saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's expressions were slightly relaxed. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three shook their heads again. We plan to explore the demonic tower. If we join the Penglai Palace, I'm afraid we won't have the chance to go. They did not know much about the Penglai Palace, but they knew that the disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate basically stayed on 100 Flowers Island. Unless invited, they would not leave at all. Thinking about it, if they joined the Penglai Palace, they would have to stay on Penglai Island forever. Compared to that, freedom was more important to them. I think you don't know much about the Penglai Palace. Long Yanwei laughed involuntarily. We, the Penglai Palace, have never restricted the freedom of our disciples. Every disciple of the Penglai Palace has freedom. Whether they choose to stay in the palace to cultivate or go out to train, we will not stop them. In this regard, we are the same as the Crimson Moon sect. Only the disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate usually stay on Penglai Island. We encourage our disciples to go out to train and fight the sea monsters. The reason why the disciples of the 100 Flowers Gate do not leave is not because their freedom is restricted. It is because they have improved a lot by staying on 100 Flowers Island. So most of the disciples are unwilling to leave. Hearing Long Yanwei's explanation, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three finally understood. So that was the case. Previously, they had been in seclusion and did not know much about the three major factions. That was why they had such a misunderstanding. I see. However, even though Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three knew this, they did not have the thought of joining the Penglai Palace. This was because joining the Penglai Palace did not seem to bring them any benefits. Although becoming a disciple of the Penglai Palace would make them more famous, and they could receive a certain amount of cultivation resources every month, these were not very attractive to them. With Bailey Hongzhuang's ability, she could obtain spiritual stones in the demonic tower faster. Long Yanwei felt a little helpless when he saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were still unmoved. Originally, he thought that he had shown enough sincerity by coming personally to recruit Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. If it were any other cultivator, they would have agreed immediately. However, judging from the current situation, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others probably didn't even know who he was. Under such circumstances, he naturally couldn't introduce himself with great fanfare, lest he be suspected of blowing his own trumpet. If the other party was just a cultivator with average potential, he would have given up recruiting him with such an attitude. After all, the dignity of Penglai Palace was not to be trifled with. However, when he thought about how Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching were the inheritors of the Bloodground Abyss and the three special monsters, he felt that he could not let them leave just like that. At the very least, he had to find out whether Baishur was the Beast King or not, and what kind of monsters the two monsters that could change their sizes were. He had been flipping through books these days. However, he had flipped through almost all the books, but could not find an introduction to the three monsters. This made him very curious. If Senior has nothing else, then we will leave. Bewitching cupped his hands at Long Yanwei and immediately prepared to leave with Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. Chapter 33:21. As long as you join Penglai Palace, I'll give you a demon pet egg that's suitable for you. How about it? Long Yanwei saw that Di Beichen and the other three had made up their minds not to join. After thinking about it, he couldn't help but throw out a heavy bomb. If the cultivators who knew Long Yanwei heard this, they would be pleasantly surprised. Because Long Yanwei was a famous contract master on Penglai Island, he had a lot of demon pet eggs in his hands, and they were all of high quality. Usually, many people wanted to ask for a demon pet egg from Long Yanwei, but other than the disciples of Penglai Palace, no matter how others begged, it was useless. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three heard this, their eyes couldn't help but light up. Demon pet eggs, this wasn't something that could be seen often. They didn't expect Long Yanwei to say such a tempting condition. A demon pet egg that's suitable for us? Di Beichen looked at Long Yanwei. He didn't know what kind of suitable Long Yanwei was talking about. Demon pet eggs, with their ability, it wasn't that they couldn't get it. It was just that it was very difficult to get a demon pet egg that was suitable for them. If it wasn't suitable for their situation, then it was just a waste of the contract opportunity. Seeing that Di Beichen and the others' faces finally changed, he couldn't help but nod and said, "That's right. It's a demon pet egg that's suitable for you. The contract beast that a cultivator of the 5th level of the Purple Realm needs must have a lot of development potential. If you just rely on yourself to find it, then it's very difficult, but I can do it." Speaking of this, Long Yanwei's face suddenly revealed a strong sense of confidence. On Penglai Island, other people didn't have the confidence to say this, but he did. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three looked at each other. They really didn't expect that it would be such a proposal. Really? Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but ask. All along, she had hoped to have a contract beast that belonged to her. Especially after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's 3 contract beasts, she was extremely envious. This kind of contract beast could not only accompany her on normal days, but also be an expert in battle. It could undoubtedly increase her battle strength by a lot. Unfortunately, she never found such a contract beast. Long Yanwei nodded. "If you don't believe me, you can ask around for my name. I'm a contract master of Penglai Palace. Many cultivators in Penglai Palace got their contract beasts from me. You don't know anything about me. I don't think you will believe everything I say. Why don't you ask around today, and go to the Penglai Palace to find me tomorrow?" Long Yanwei had a faint smile on his face. From the expressions of these 4 little fellows, he knew that these 4 little fellows were already tempted. Presumably, no one would be able to refuse such a condition. Although it would break the rules of Penglai Palace, with his status, it was not a big deal to break it a little. Without waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 to answer, Long Yanwei had already handed a token to Di Beichen and said, "Tomorrow, take this and come to Penglai Palace to find me." With that, Long Yanwei left. He was willing to give these 4 little fellows some time. After Long Yanwei left, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but look at each other. Their minds couldn't wrap their heads around it. Chapter 33:22. When Xiren nodded with a stupefied expression. That seems to be the case. With our current strength, the level of the demon pet egg that we need is not an ordinary high level. He actually said that he would give it to us. Bailey Hongzhuang was a bit incredulous. She was also a contract master, so she naturally knew the value of this demon pet egg. The higher the level of the demon pet egg, the higher the difficulty of the contract. Back then, the few demon beasts that she helped to contract were not high level, so she was able to complete the contract. If the level was high, with her ability at that time, she would not be able to complete the contract. However, if this Long Yanwei was able to seal a demon beast of this level, it could be seen that Long Yanwei's ability in this area was not ordinary. Di Beichen's eyes were also filled with doubt. This feeling was like a pie that fell from the sky and was suddenly hit by good luck. However, with their usual style, they did not believe that there would be such a good thing. Why do we care so much about him? Won't we know if we ask the others? Xiao Hei's eyes flashed with excitement. If Di Beichen and the others could have contracted beasts, then their contracted beasts team would increase again. If a few more little guys came, they would have something to bully. From the attitude of this Long Yanwei, we can see that his identity should not be simple. If we casually ask around, I'm afraid that many people will know. Xiaobai also spoke out. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three looked at each other. Just as Xiaohei and Xiaobai said, there was no point in them thinking too much here. This was something that could be found out as long as they understood it. Immediately, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three gave up the idea of leaving Penglai Island. If they missed such a good opportunity, it would be a pity. When the four of them returned to the inn and asked the waiter about Long Yanwei, the waiter's face could not help but be filled with shock. Guests, you actually don't know Master Long? Bewitching nodded. We are newcomers to Penglai Island, so we don't know much about this place. We just happened to hear Master Long's name today. I hope you can introduce him to us. After hearing Bewitching say that he was a newcomer to Penglai Island, the waiter revealed an understanding expression. So that's how it is. Otherwise, I was wondering why you guys hadn't heard of Master Long's name in Penglai Island. The attendant smiled awkwardly, as if he was apologetic for his exaggerated attitude earlier. Master Long is the contract master of the Penglai Palace. Many cultivators have sharpened their minds to join the Penglai Palace. Master Long was one of the reasons why the Crimson Moon sect couldn't compare to the Penglai Palace for so many years. This was because Master Long had a lot of demon pet eggs in his hands. Moreover, these demon pet eggs were of very high levels. As long as you become a disciple of the Penglai Palace, you may be able to obtain a demon pet egg. This is the most attractive part. However, not every disciple of the Penglai Palace can have it. The waiter immediately introduced a lot of things about Long Yanwei to Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. Until this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three finally understood why Long Yanwei revealed such a shocked expression when he knew that they chose to refuse. Chapter 33-23. After the attendant left, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh out loud. I'm afraid that Long Yanwei didn't even think that the four of us are real laymen. We haven't even heard of his name. Sheng Guaninging laughed like a flower. Now that I think of Long Yanwei's expression before, I find it very interesting. Haha. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. She also felt that it was very funny. A big shot appeared in front of them just like that, but the four of them didn't know at all. Thinking about it, any big shot who encountered such a situation would be very helpless. They wouldn't even have the slightest chance to show their status. In that case, Long Yanwei can really give us suitable demon pet eggs. This is a very rare opportunity. Bewitching's face showed a touch of seriousness. Long Yanwei had the entire Penglai Palace as his backing. This foundation was naturally not something that an ordinary person could compare with. If it were them, it would be extremely difficult to find a contract beast that was suitable for them. Now that such a good opportunity was in front of them, it would be a pity to give it up. Since the Penglai Palace won't restrict our freedom, why don't we join the Penglai Palace? There's no harm in it anyway. Xiren's eyes flashed with interest. He had the idea of not taking advantage of a bastard. If he missed this opportunity, then it would really be the wrath of the heavens and the resentment of the people. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. If you can have your own contract beast, as long as you train it well, the speed of its improvement will be very fast. This was an opportunity to increase the overall strength. A contract beast was the most loyal partner of a cultivator. This was definitely worth it. It seems that we all have the same idea. Bewitching glanced at everyone and then smiled. Since the Penglai Palace can help us pass this news back, then we might as well let the people of the Penglai Palace help us. Anyway, as long as they pass the news that we are safe and sound, everyone can rest assured. Xiren said. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment. With their current situation, as long as their family knew that they were safe, there was indeed no need to rush back. After all, cultivating here was faster for them to improve. When we go to the Penglai Palace tomorrow, we will ask this question again. If we can bring the Qianquan bag back, it will undoubtedly be the best. Ever since they came to the Penglai Island and saw that everyone was using spirit stones to cultivate, Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to bring the spirit stones she earned back. Although she only had a few 100,000 spirit stones, It was enough for Lan Yunxiao and the others to cultivate for a while. The cultivators of Penglai Island were so strong that they posed a threat to the outside world. However, most of the cultivators of Penglai Island only stayed here and had no intention of going out. Qian's is Qian's and the Qian plan. Qian's is Qian's Qian's face. Now that their problems have been solved, it would be best if their family members could also improve their strength. The next day, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three went to Penglai Palace early after making a decision. Chapter 33-24. However, as soon as Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three approached Penglai Palace, they were stopped by the gatekeepers. "Who are you?" The two cultivators looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three with a serious expression. "Those who are not disciples of Penglai Palace are not allowed to enter." Bewitching immediately took out the token that Long Yanwei had given them. "We are here to look for Master Long. Please pass on the message." Master Long. Listening to Bewitching's words, the two could not help but show a touch of surprise in their eyes. Usually, there were many people who wanted to see Master Long, but there were very few who could really see him. However, the token in Bewitching's hand was somewhat familiar to them. It did seem to belong to Master Long. Suddenly, the two of them looked at Bewitching and the other three with a different gaze. "Wait here for a moment. I will pass on the message." "Thank you." Not long after, the disciple who went to pass on the message came back. "Come with me." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three suddenly showed a smile on their faces. They followed the disciple and walked into the interior of Penglai Palace. The four walked all the way in Penglai Palace. The ground and walls of the entire Penglai Palace were all covered with marble. Under the bright light, it looked even more noble and extraordinary. Looking at such an arrangement, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also understood that the cost of the construction must be very high. It was obvious that Penglai Palace was very rich. The entire Penglai Palace was very large. It seemed to be divided into many areas. Many areas could not be approached at will. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three did not ask anything. They thought that Penglai Palace must be a place with a strict hierarchy. Finally, after walking for a long time, the disciple stopped in front of a building. "Master Long is here. You can go in." "Thank you very much." Bewitching cupped his hands, and the disciple turned and left. When Long Yanwei saw Bewitching and the other three, a joyful smile couldn't help but surface on his face. He had already guessed that these four little fellows would definitely come to find him today. Demon pet eggs had a great attraction to every cultivator. "You're here." There was a faint smile on Long Yanwei's face. He did not show the slightest bit of arrogance because of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's agreement. He still had an amiable and approachable appearance. "Please sit." Seeing Long Yanwei's appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but sigh in their hearts. No wonder Long Yanwei had such a great reputation on Penglai Island. At the very least, they did not see the slightest bit of arrogance from Long Yanwei. It was not easy for someone in a high position to maintain such an amiable attitude. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three sat down at the side, but their eyes quietly sized up the entire hall. This hall was extremely eye-catching among the many buildings they had seen before. It could be seen that Long Yanwei's position in Penglai Palace was very high. The decoration inside was not magnificent, but it was unique. It showed the atmosphere and luxury everywhere, but it was not tainted with the slightest bit of vulgarity. It was very consistent with Long Yanwei's character. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three sat down, they realized that Long Yanwei had already sent people to prepare their tea. "Since you came to find me today, you must be willing to join Penglai Palace?" Long Yanwei's face had a faint smile as he went straight to the point. Chapter 33-25. Hearing Long Yanwei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three looked at each other, and then nodded together. Since they had already made their decision, there was naturally no need to hide anything at this moment. "Before joining, we just want to know that what Master Long said about giving each of us a suitable monster pet egg should be true, right?" Bewitching stared at Long Yanwei and asked aloud. The only attraction of Penglai Palace to them was the monster pet egg. Other than that, they really didn't care about anything else. Long Yanwei nodded. But after listening to Di Beichen's words, he felt that things seemed to be a little different from what he had imagined. That day when you fought with the heaven-shaking faction's leader, I saw it with my own eyes. As far as I know, you already have 3 contract beasts. There should only be one person who doesn't have a contract beast, right? Long Yanwei stared at Di Beichen and the other 3. So far, he still didn't know which 3 contract beasts belonged to which 3 cultivators. However, Xiao He and Xiao Bai were obviously contract beasts of the same breed, and they were of the same age. If his judgment wasn't wrong, these 2 contract beasts should belong to a couple among Di Beichen and the other 3. Back then, Bai Shi fought together with Di Beichen, and their cooperation was extremely good. Therefore, Long Yanwei had already determined that Bai Shi was Di Beichen's contract beast. Xiao He and Xiao Bai should belong to Xiren and Shangguan Yingying's contract beasts. The only person who didn't have a contract beast should be Bailey Hongzhuang. However, when he confirmed this point, Long Yanwei felt that something was amiss. Because Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao He and Xiao Bai cooperated extremely well, and they looked more like her contract beasts, he couldn't be sure for a moment. Following Long Yanwei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were slightly startled, and their expressions suddenly became a little more interesting. In fact, Long Yanwei's thoughts weren't wrong at all. No matter who it was, after seeing the previous situation, they would have determined that the 3 of them had contract beasts. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was really too special, and couldn't be judged with common sense at all. At the same time, they also understood why Long Yanwei would be so generous to give them such a condition. 1 contract beast and 3 contract beasts were completely different. With Long Yanwei's status, it shouldn't be difficult to take out a contract beast that matched their status. But to take out 3, this was a huge amount of capital. For a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and others didn't know how to answer to Long Yanwei's question. When Long Yanwei noticed the slightly awkward and strange expressions on Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3's faces, he couldn't help but reveal a trace of doubt on his face. He asked, "Am I wrong?" Hearing this, Di Beichen muttered to himself for a moment, then said, "Lord Long, our situation might not be the same as what you think." "Then what situation is it? You can tell me. Since I've promised you this, I'll definitely do it." Long Yanwei raised his eyebrows. He was really curious about where he had made a mistake in his judgment. As soon as he said this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3's eyes lit up. They seemed to have found a good opportunity to take advantage of him. With Long Yanwei's status, it was unlikely that he would take back his promise after making it. Chapter 33-26. Following Di Beichen's words, Long Yanwei became the one with a strange expression. He looked at Di Beichen's group of 4 in confusion, not understanding what Di Beichen meant. "None of you have contracted beasts." Long Yanwei frowned. "But according to what I saw earlier, your group clearly has 3 contracted beasts. Could it be that 2 of them have not contracted? That's impossible. If they had not contracted, then they would not be contracted beasts, but monsters. Monsters would not listen to the commands of cultivators. Even if they cooperated for a short period of time, they could betray at any time. It wasn't as if no one on the Shengxian continent had ever attempted such a thing, but it had all ended in failure. This was because demonic beasts had different personalities from humans. Without the power of a contract, their wild nature could erupt at any time. Not only that, the higher the level of a monster, the stronger the bestial nature in its body. At the level of the 5th level of the Purple Realm, ordinary monsters would not be able to form any kind of cooperative relationship with cultivators. If Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 could really do this, then he would have to ask for advice. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but say, "To tell you the truth, those 3 monsters are my contracted beasts." At this level of cultivation, Bailey Hongzhuang no longer had to hide the fact that she had 3 contract beasts. What's more, her 3 contract beasts were not something that anyone could underestimate. 2 of them were at the 5th level of the Purple Realm, and 1 was at the 6th level of the Purple Realm. Ordinary people would not dare to offend such a team, so they are all yours alone. Long Yanwei suddenly understood, but when he realized what this meant, he could not help but be stunned. Then, his eyes widened as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, as if he had seen something unbelievable. I didn't hear you clearly. You said that these 3 contracted beasts are all yours alone? You contracted 3 demonic beasts by yourself? How is that possible? Long Yanwei, who had been extremely calm, could not help but become agitated at this moment. This completely subverted his common sense. Every cultivator could only contract 1 monster. Was this not the rule of the Shengxian continent? It was not that no one had ever tried to contract 2 monsters, but no one had ever succeeded. It was proven that a cultivator could only contract 1 monster at most. How could Bailey Hongzhuang contract 3 monsters alone? Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 were very indifferent to Long Yanwei's exaggerated reaction. In fact, when Bewitching's group of 3 found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had such a special ability, they were also very surprised. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. You didn't hear wrong. These 3 contracted beasts are my contracted beasts alone. 1 beasts. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's confirmation, Long Yanwei's incredulous expression did not improve. Can you tell me how you did it? As a sealing master, he thought that he was very familiar with things like contracts. However, from Bailey Hongzhuang's group, he had seen too many strange things. It made him start to doubt his previous knowledge and judgment. I don't know either. I just succeeded in contracting 3 monsters by chance. Chapter 33:27. The reason why she was able to contract 3 monsters was entirely due to the Chaos Ring. If it wasn't for the special ability bestowed upon her by the Chaos Ring, she wouldn't have been able to form a contract with 3 demonic beasts. However, she definitely couldn't reveal the secret of the Chaos Ring. So at this moment, she could only play dumb. In fact, there was no need for Long Yanwei to study this point at all, because this point could not be replicated at all. Other than Bailey Hongzhuang, it was impossible for other cultivators to do it, unless there were other chaos rings in this world. However, this possibility was even smaller. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Long Yanwei also understood that Bailey Hongzhuang definitely did not want to reveal this secret, so he did not continue to ask. Everyone had their own secrets. It was not a good habit to rashly inquire about other people's secrets. What's more, they had only met twice. It was naturally impossible for Bailey Hongzhuang to tell him everything. This is really amazing. I have been a contract master for so many years, and have never seen such an example. I wonder if you can let your monsters out for me to take a look? Long Yanwei said. At this moment, only Baisher was following Bailey Hongzhuang. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were both on Bailey Hongzhuang's head. Long Yanwei did not notice. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, and did not refuse Long Yanwei's request. Since Long Yanwei had already seen the situation of their battle that day, then whether it was Baisher, Xiao He, or Xiao Bai, he believed that he already had a certain understanding of them. Even if they did not know Long Yanwei's strength, they knew that Master Long, who had such a position in Penglai Palace, was definitely extraordinary. In the next second, Xiao He and Xiao Bai appeared in front of Long Yanwei. However, the 2 little guys were still sitting on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulders. Seeing this scene, Long Yanwei also confirmed that his previous judgment was not wrong. These 2 monsters did indeed have the ability to change their size. It was really amazing. Young Master D, I wonder if you would mind letting me see their contract totems? Long Yanwei shifted his gaze from Xiao He and Xiao Bai to Bailey Hongzhuang. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang was extremely certain, this news was too shocking to Long Yanwei. If he did not see it with his own eyes, he would never believe it. Bewitching and the other 2 could not help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. If Bailey Hongzhuang was unwilling, they could directly refuse. Even if they would offend Long Yanwei, it was not a big deal. Bailey Hongzhuang to Bailey Hongzhuang. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang's mind moved. A circular sealing totem appeared on Baisher, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai's bodies. This totem had always existed. Any cultivator with a contract beast would have such a sealing totem. It was just that it could not be seen normally. It could only be seen when it was deliberately revealed. When Long Yanwei saw that the totems on the 3 contract beasts were exactly the same, he completely believed Bailey Hongzhuang's words. All of this was actually true. The 3 contract beasts actually belonged to Bailey Hongzhuang alone. Long Yanwei sighed and shook his head. He said, "This situation has really overturned my understanding. I've really learned something today." Chapter 33-28. Master Long. Now that this point has been confirmed, I wonder what your plans are? Bewitching reminded Long Yanwei. They came here for Long Yanwei's answer, not to let Bailey Hongzhuang do research for Long Yanwei. Hearing Bewitching's words, Long Yanwei finally recovered from his shock. Very quickly, he understood the meaning of Bewitching's question. "So, none of you 3 have contracted beasts?" Bewitching, when Xiren, and Shangguan Yingying all nodded. They secretly cursed in their hearts, wondering if Long Yanwei would go back on his word. Actually, this couldn't be considered going back on his word. From the beginning to the end, Long Yanwei only thought that they were missing 1 demon pet egg. Now that it had become 3, most people wouldn't be able to bear it. Therefore, Bewitching and the other 2 didn't have too much hope. Even if Long Yanwei refused, it would be reasonable. Looking at Bewitching and the other 2 who nodded in front of him, Long Yanwei finally reacted. In this way, he would have to take out 3 demon pet eggs. This was completely different from what he had thought before. Long Yanwei felt that it was worth it to use 1 demon pet egg to recruit these 4 young people. However, to use 3 demon pet eggs to recruit them, the price was not ordinary. If this news were to spread, everyone would think that he was crazy. A demon pet egg of this level was extremely precious. Many cultivators had paid an extremely high price to obtain 1 from him. Just like that, he gave out 3 for free. Normally, no one with a normal brain would do such a thing. However, when he thought about the promise he had made before, he felt that he was in a dilemma. Speaking of which, there was indeed a loophole in what he had said before. He had said that he would give Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 demon pet eggs that were suitable for them. But he had never said the number. Therefore, it was extremely normal for Bewitching and the others to think that it was 3 demon pet eggs. From the beginning to the end, this could only be said to be because he hadn't figured out the specific situation before, resulting in such a problem. Now that things had developed to this point, Long Yanwei was a little embarrassed for a moment. He didn't know how to answer. Didn't Master Long already say before that he would give each of us a suitable demon pet egg? Then we'll thank Master Long in advance. Xiren noticed Long Yanwei's awkwardness and understood why Long Yanwei felt awkward. Bewitching was too upright. If things continued to develop like this, he might miss this good opportunity. Since Long Yanwei was in a dilemma, he might as well help Long Yanwei make a decision. When Xiren had always felt that this saying made a lot of sense. 3 demon pet eggs. If he missed this opportunity, he would never have this opportunity again. Although he was a little shameless, he believed that with Long Yanwei's wealth and ability, this little loss was not enough to hurt him. He was just a little annoyed in his heart. However, this demon pet egg had fallen into their hands. That was a real benefit. Master Long, thank you very much. We have always been troubled by the matter of contracting beasts. You directly helped us solve this big problem. We will definitely remember this kindness in our hearts. Noticing Xiren's gaze, Bewitching and Shangguan Yingying also said words of gratitude. Chapter 33-29. After all, in this kind of situation, if he were to say no, wouldn't that be equivalent to slapping his own face? With his status, he would rather suffer a loss than to slap his own face. However, such a big loss, it really made his heart ache. Long Yanwei couldn't help but glance at Xiren. He didn't expect this kid to be so cunning. He directly sealed off his escape route. He felt helpless in his heart. After Bailey Hongzhuang saw Xiren's actions, she also felt a wave of admiration in her heart. Just by looking at Long Yanwei's expression, she knew that they had taken advantage of him this time. Forget it. Since you guys have already thanked me, then this matter is decided. Long Yanwei sighed. Since things had come to this point, there was nothing he could do about it. Of course, if he had known about this condition before he recruited Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, he would definitely not have recruited them. With such a price, he could recruit too many genius cultivators. However, he had been made a fool of. He could only comfort himself that the potential of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three wasn't something that ordinary geniuses could compare to. Hearing Long Yanwei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three revealed a joyful smile. This was really good news. Although there were some twists and turns in the middle, however, the result was still as they wished. Thank you, Master Long. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three left the hall where Long Yanwei was, the smile on Long Yanwei's face disappeared. What replaced it was a thick sense of helplessness. I didn't expect that I would be schemed against by a few little fellows this time. Long Yanwei shook his head. One had to know that every demon pet egg of this level required him to spend a lot of effort. He didn't expect that there would be three less. Compared to Long Yanwei's depression, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were extremely happy. This was the best news for them. Xiren, you were too smart just now. Bailey Hongzhuang gave Xiren a thumbs up. If it wasn't for Xiren tricking Long Yanwei earlier, their contract beasts would have been ruined. Xiren raised his eyebrows. You guys can't even do something like this. You still need me to do it. Haha. Shangguan Yingying also looked at Xiren in surprise. Usually, I didn't see you have any great ability. I didn't expect you to be so quick-witted. To be honest, among the four of us, you're the only one with the thickest skin. Hearing this, when Xiren couldn't help but roll his eyes. Yingying, you only need to praise me for being smart, witty, and wise. There's no need for you to say the rest. Haha. Shangguan Yingying stuck out her tongue. I'm used to teasing you, but I really have to praise you for what happened just now. Beichen, didn't I do a good job? When Xiren blinked. With Master Long's status, he can't go back on his word, so he can only suffer in silence. However, with his rich family background, he can still afford this loss. Looking at Xiren's proud look, the corner of D. Beichen's mouth curled up. He said, he is indeed powerful. We have taken such a big advantage of Master Long. In the future, we must remember, if there is a chance, we must fight for Master Long. After all, we were recruited by him. Chapter 3330. The most important thing was that they took such a big advantage of Long Yanwei. But Long Yuanwu did not show the slightest bit of anger. He just felt very helpless about what he had said before. Just from this point, it could be seen that Long Yanwei was a magnanimous person. He was definitely not a narrow-minded person. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three slowly walked to the reporting hall of Penglai Palace. Long Yanwei just asked them to wait here for a while. He would soon arrange for someone to help them register as disciples of Penglai Palace. As for the monster pet egg, they would have to wait until they became a true disciple of Penglai Palace before they could receive it. Long Yanwei had to help them choose a suitable monster pet egg first. In this regard, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were not in a hurry. Since Long Yanwei had already agreed, he would definitely give them the monster pet egg. What was the point of waiting for a few days? The reporting hall of Penglai Palace was very large, but there were very few people inside. There were only a few scattered people. It seemed very empty. The four directly sat down in the rest area on the side, waiting for the person who would guide them to come. As far as I know, there are many disciples of Penglai Palace, but we haven't seen many cultivators so far. Where did they go? Shangguan Yingying looked around curiously. She was originally looking forward to seeing the spectacular scene of Penglai Palace's disciples. But the situation was obviously different from what she had imagined. We should be outside of Penglai Palace now. The disciples of Penglai Palace should not be cultivating here. That's why we haven't seen many people, when Xiren said. But we just went to where Master Long was. It can't be that the entire outside is so big, right? Shangguan Yingying raised her eyebrows and said incredulously, I feel that the place we just went to should not be an ordinary place. It's extremely secluded and deep. I'm afraid that ordinary cultivators can't enter at all, Bailey Hongzhuang said. D. Beichen nodded slightly. Master Long's position in Penglai Palace is very high. The place where he is must be where ordinary disciples can't get close. So it's not surprising that we can't see anyone. Shangguan Yingying curled her lips. This Penglai Palace has a strict hierarchy. We should know after we become Penglai Palace's disciples. I'm afraid we'll have to wait for a while. Master Long has suffered such a huge loss. I'm afraid he'll need some time to recover. As Di Beichen's voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but chuckle. Everything that had happened since they met Long Yanwei made them feel extremely amused. Let's take this opportunity to remove the disguise on our faces, Shengguan Yingying said. Previously, when they were talking with Long Yanwei had told them that after becoming a disciple of Penglai Palace, there was no need to disguise themselves here. This was also one of the rules of the Penglai Palace. However, they could still continue to disguise themselves when they went out. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three did not have any objections. When they first came to Penglai Island, they did so for the sake of safety. But now, as they gradually familiarized themselves with Penglai Island, they no longer had any scruples. It wasn't a bad choice to reveal their true faces. At least, they were no longer cultivators, who were only at the 3rd level of the Purple Realm. Chapter 33-31. Li Shengkai was very surprised. Today, Master Long told him that he had recruited 4 new cultivators, and asked him to help register the 4 cultivators, so that they could become official disciples of Penglai Palace. If such words came from other people's mouths, Li Shengkai would think it was normal. After all, Penglai Palace was so big that they would recruit some cultivators every once in a while. It was just that Master Long was usually focused on contracting beasts, and rarely took the initiative to recruit disciples, which made him surprised. What kind of genius cultivators were worthy of Master Long's personal recruitment? Once this news spread, it would attract a lot of attention. When Li Shengkai arrived at the reporting hall, he saw the backs of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. He immediately walked over and said, "You 4 should be the cultivators recruited by Master Long, right?" Hearing the voice coming from behind, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 turned to look at the person who came. They saw that this person was wearing the uniform of Penglai Palace's disciple with a smile on his face. "Yes, it's us," Di Beichen said. After Li Shengkai saw the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, he couldn't help but be surprised. In his opinion, the cultivators who could be recruited by Master Long must be very talented in cultivation, because Master Long didn't care about ordinary cultivators at all. However, the 4 cultivators in front of him were too young. Looking at them, the oldest was probably no more than 25 years old, and the youngest looked like she was only 20 years old. On Penglai Island, almost the vast majority of cultivators were around 30 years old. After all, it would take a long time to cultivate to the 5th level of the Purple Realm. These 4 faces were so young that for a moment, Li Shengkai even wondered if the 4 of them deliberately disguised themselves. However, after thinking of Master Long, he felt that perhaps this was the strength of the 4 people in front of him. Breaking through to the 5th level of the Purple Realm, at such a young age, was indeed a genius. At least in this regard, they had already surpassed many disciples of Penglai Palace. In addition, what surprised Li Shengkai was the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. Compared to their outstanding cultivation, their appearance was not inferior at all. A handsome man and a beautiful woman, at a glance. It was enough to make people's eyes light up. Even though 1,000 thoughts were running through his mind, Li Shengkai's expression did not change much. He smiled and said, "Come with me. I'll bring you to report." Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 followed Li Shengkai to the front of the reporting hall. A female disciple helped to record the information of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. At the same time, a Qingquan bag fell into each of their hands. The registration information was very simple. All he had to do was to report his name and strength. Seeing this, Shengguan Yingying couldn't help but ask, "Is the report that simple?" She thought it would be a very complicated matter, but she didn't expect it to be settled so easily. Hearing this, Li Shengkai smiled faintly and immediately explained, "If you were an ordinary cultivator, you would need to go through an assessment. The reporting process is very tedious, but you were recommended by Master Long, so this step is directly omitted. It's much more convenient." Chapter 33-32. After hearing Li Shunkai's explanation, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others understood that Long Yanwei's referral had saved them a lot of trouble. Speaking of which, I'm a little curious about how you know Master Long. Li Shunkai couldn't help but ask curiously. Long Yanwei basically stayed in Penglai Palace all the time and rarely went out. He really couldn't guess how Bailey Hongzhuang and the others knew Master Long. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other. They had just arrived at Penglai Palace, and there were many strong people there. It was better to keep a low profile. Li Shunkai also noticed the hesitation on the faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others and quickly said, "By the way, let me introduce myself first. My name is Li Shunkai, an Outer Hall disciple. We will be in the same sect in the future. If you need any help, don't hesitate to look for me. Then I'll have to trouble you, senior brother Li." Bewitching cupped his hands. "You're welcome." Li Shunkai smiled and waved his hand. "I have always liked to make friends, and I can tell that you are genius cultivators at first glance. I feel very lucky to have the opportunity to make friends with you." Looking at Li Shunkai's honest face, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also showed a kind smile on their faces. However, no one really regarded Li Shunkai as a trustworthy person. They had already suffered this kind of loss when they met Gao Hanxia and Gao Hanxiu. Most of the time, the more honest and simple-looking a person was, the more likely they were to cause harm to others. Anyone who could get some status in Penglai Palace was not an ordinary person. If they dared to look down on others, then they could capsize at any time. This Qingquan bag contains the exclusive clothes of our Penglai Palace. You have to wear these clothes on weekdays. If you go out as a disciple of Penglai Palace, you also need to wear these clothes. This is the symbol of our Penglai Palace. Many times, when you are training outside, wearing these clothes can also reduce some trouble. If the clothes are not suitable, you can come back to exchange. However, you must use your old clothes to exchange, so as to prevent disciples from taking too many and giving them to cultivators outside. About your residence, I happen to be going back to my residence. Let's talk about it while walking. What do you think? Li Shunkai's face always had a kind smile, and he generously introduced the situation of Penglai Palace to Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. "Then I'll have to trouble senior brother Li." "You're welcome. This is what Master Long asked me to do. If I don't do it well, I won't be able to explain it to Master Long," Li said honestly. The next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three followed Li Shunkai out of the reporting hall and walked towards the residential area. The palace's disciples and the inner this. Disciples can't compare outer. And the resources are the resources. The resources, and S's. However, the number of inner palace disciples has never been high. It seems that there have never been more than 500 of them. As for the specific reason, I am not too sure. Chapter 33-33. Is there a big difference in strength between the inner and outer palace disciples? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with interest. It was the first time she had heard about the inner and outer palace. She had always thought that Penglai Palace was a whole. She did not expect that there was such a division inside. It seemed that their judgment was right. This Penglai Palace was really hierarchical. Li Shunkai nodded. Of course. If you want to become an inner palace disciple, you must pass the promotion assessment. I have never participated in the promotion assessment, but according to the information I have learned, it is very difficult to pass the promotion assessment. Most outer palace disciples have failed. As for how strong the inner palace disciples are, I am not very clear about this, because the inner palace disciples practice in the inner palace of Penglai Palace. They usually do not deal with us outer palace disciples at all. It is difficult for us to come in contact with them. If you have the strength to become an inner palace disciple, it will be best. Both your identity and status will be greatly improved. If you say that you are an inner palace disciple of Penglai Palace, when you walk on Penglai Island, ordinary practitioners will not dare to offend you. If you are only an outer palace disciple, although most people will not choose to be your enemy, there will still be some trouble. We are now going to the practice area of the outer palace disciples. Although we have become Outer Palace disciples of Penglai Palace, if we can't pass the promotion assessment and become an Inner Palace disciple after 5 years here, then we will be stripped of our identity as a Penglai Palace disciple and become an ordinary practitioner again. Therefore, almost all of the cultivators are working very hard in their cultivation in order to pass the advancement test. Listening to Li Shunkai's introduction, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 understood that the number of disciples in Penglai Palace had been controlled within a certain range for this reason. As long as they could not become an Inner Palace disciple in 5 years, then they would be stripped of their identity as a Penglai Palace disciple. Therefore, the number of disciples maintained a dynamic balance. Every month, you can go to the reporting hall to receive cultivation resources. If you go out to practice, these cultivation resources will be accumulated, and you can receive them next time. In addition, our Outer Palace disciples are all in the same residential area, but many unfamiliar disciples do not come and go. However, if you meet a Penglai Palace disciple outside, and they are in danger, you must help them. Otherwise, you will be disregarding your relationship with your fellow disciples. Once you are found out, you will be punished. If the situation is serious, you may be expelled directly. We understand. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 suddenly understood. It was no wonder that Penglai Palace could enjoy such a reputation and status. This rule probably played a part in it. At least in the eyes of the outside practitioners, the disciples of Penglai Palace disciples were unusually united. Therefore, ordinary people did not dare to offend the disciples of Penglai Palace. Penglai Palace's disciples. If they are not strong enough, it is better to do it. If you. Chapter 33-34. Listening to Li Shunkai's introduction, although Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 did not know enough about the outer hall of Penglai Palace, they had a general outline in their hearts. At least, this outer hall was definitely not a very peaceful place. On the contrary, there would be much more friction here than outside Penglai Palace. Finally, under Li Shunkai's lead, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 finally arrived at the outer hall disciples' cultivation area. This way, they found that Long Yanwei's residence, which they went to before, was in the opposite direction from here. No wonder they did not see any cultivators before. Coming to this residential area was undoubtedly much more lively. There were many outer hall disciples, so this residential area was also a large area. Looking around, dozens of buildings turned out to be the residential area of outer hall disciples. Seeing such a scale, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were amazed. When they looked at the gate of Penglai Palace before, they felt that Penglai Palace was huge, but now looking at the residential area, they felt that everything they saw outside was nothing at all. What's more, this was only a residential area of outer hall disciples, not including other places. The entire Penglai Palace was divided into 2 areas, inner hall and outer hall. This Penglai Palace is really big, several times bigger than I thought. Shangguan Yingying's eyes flashed with surprise. Penglai Island was just an island. She really did not expect the sphere of influence on an island to be so large. When Xiren nodded, when I was on Penglai Island earlier, I thought that Penglai Palace only occupied a small part of Penglai Island. Now it seems that Penglai Palace occupies more than half of Penglai Island. No wonder it's called Penglai Island. I just don't know if Hundred Flowers Island and Red Moon Island are the same. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. Penglai Island should be the gathering place of Penglai Palace. The streets we saw before were just lively places developed around Penglai Palace. Only after entering the Penglai Palace would they understand the real situation. This was very different from what they knew before. This is the second building where I live. If you need anything in the future, you can come here to find me. Li Shunkai pointed at the building where he lived. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 looked around. The entire residential area of the outer palace looked exactly the same, except for the number of buildings marked on the buildings. As he spoke, Li Shunkai pointed to the other side. That's the 5th building where you live. I'll take you there first. There's a door number hanging on each door. You can confirm your room by looking at the door number. The 4 of you came in together, so you should live close to each other. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' eyes lit up. If they lived close by, it would be the most convenient for them. When Li Shengkai led Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 to building number 5, many Outer Palace disciples' gazes landed on Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4. Their gazes were filled with surprise and doubt. I didn't expect new disciples to join today, but these guys seem a little too young. They can pass the assessment of Penglai Palace at such a young age. It seems that these guys are not simple. Chapter 33-35. When almost everyone saw the age of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, they couldn't help but exclaim in their hearts. To be able to reach such a cultivation at such a young age, they were truly geniuses. However, there were even more people who were unconvinced. All the cultivators here believed that they were geniuses and were absolutely unwilling to admit that they were inferior to anyone else. I don't know if these guys are strong or not, but their appearances are very outstanding. Look at those 2 women, they are both peerless beauties. Their temperament and appearance can be said to be unparalleled. The gazes of all the male disciples were attracted by Bailey Hongzhuang and Shengguan Yingying. When a cultivator's strength increased to a certain level, their appearance would also improve a lot. It was precisely because of this that when one reached the 5th level of the Purple Realm and above, it was impossible for ugly men and women to exist. At least they looked very good. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shengguan Yingying were already outstanding in appearance. Coupled with the improvement of their temperament, they appeared even more outstanding. Those 2 men are also very handsome. They look like pretty boys. When talking about Bewitching and Wuxia, the group of men were not so polite. Their appearance was definitely a great weapon for women. Everyone couldn't help but be envious and jealous. Compared to the disdain of the male disciples, the eyes of the female disciples lit up when they looked at Bewitching and Wuxia. It was human nature to eat and lust. Regardless of whether it was a man or a woman, they all liked to look at people with outstanding appearances. This kind of handsome appearance was definitely one of the best in the entire outer hall. Li Shengkai led Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 all the way to the 5th building. He heard everyone's discussion clearly and couldn't help but laugh. Junior brother, junior sister, your appearances are really outstanding. When I first saw you, I couldn't help but be surprised. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 couldn't help but show some helplessness on their faces. The reason why they chose to disguise themselves before was also inseparable from this matter. It was because they were all easy to remember at a glance. After changing their appearances, they would become ordinary, and no one would pay attention to them. This way, they would be able to save a lot of trouble. However, Penglai Palace had its own rules. Cultivators had to show their true faces in Penglai Palace. Otherwise, no one could be sure if you were really a disciple of Penglai Palace. Hence, this problem arose once again. Haha, when Ziren chuckled. This kind of praise was also troublesome for them. This is building number 5. Your Qingquan bag contains the key to your residence. The house number is written on it, so you can go in directly. The manual also contains the various matters of living in the outer palace. I believe you will understand after reading it. If there's nothing else I can help you with, I'll take my leave first, Li Shengkai said with a smile. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 all cupped their hands. Thank you, senior brother Li. Take care. Looking at the expressions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, Li Shengkai nodded. However, his expression was a little awkward and his footsteps were a little hesitant. However, after seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 didn't do anything else, he strode away. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 couldn't help but look at each other. Did they miss something? Chapter 33-36. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Shengguan Yingying couldn't help but nod her head. Hongzhuang, I also have the same feeling. It seems like there's a problem. But we didn't do anything wrong. What problem could there be? Ziren raised his eyebrows. His face was full of doubt. He really couldn't think of anything wrong with their behavior. Bewitching looked at Li Shengkai's back as he left. His expression was unfathomable. He seemed to be thinking about something. In the end, he didn't say anything. Forget it. Let's not think too much about it. Let's find our own residence first. Everyone nodded and immediately walked into the interior of the fifth building. They had been standing here for a long time. Many people had been staring at them. The number of gazes that were sizing them up was not ordinary. Soon, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others found the place where they lived. Just as Li Shengkai said, their 4 rooms were adjacent to each other. It was very convenient. Bailey Hongzhuang opened the door. When she saw it, her eyes couldn't help but flash with a hint of amazement. The room was extremely large. It was even larger than the room in the inn. The furnishings and decorations inside were very simple. However, whether it was the material or other aspects, these things were obviously very valuable. This kind of living place was really satisfying. Wow, I didn't expect a room to be so big. It's really comfortable to live here. Shang Guaning Ying's eyes flashed with excitement. When they were outside, most of the places they lived were very simple. However, the room in front of them wasn't just a place to live. On the contrary, it was extremely comfortable. Bailey Hongzhuang's face rippled with a faint smile. The environment here is indeed not bad. It's quite good to cultivate here. They also needed their own residence on Penglai Island. After all, they couldn't always stay in the Magic Tower. After leaving the Magic Tower, they needed to find a place to settle down and cultivate in peace. Now it seemed that it was indeed a good choice for them to join Penglai Palace. Moreover, there were demon pet eggs. This time, they had really profited. For a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were filled with gratitude towards Long Yanwei. If Long Yanwei had not gone to recruit them, they would have missed this great opportunity. However, at this moment, Long Yanwei's heart was filled with helplessness. He had stayed in Penglai Palace for so long, but he had never suffered such a big loss. His heart was filled with helplessness. Yanwei, I heard that you recruited those 4 little fellows? Yizihua strode into Long Yanwei's residence with a big smile on his face. You're really fast. However, Yizihua did not receive a response from Long Yanwei. He only saw Long Yanwei sitting in the room with a helpless expression. What's wrong with you? Why do you have such an expression? Yizihua couldn't help but wonder. He hadn't heard of Long Yanwei having any troubles recently. Long Yanwei waved his hand and said, Don't mention it. I suffered a huge loss today. Hearing this, Yizihua could not help but be stunned, and a look of astonishment appeared on his face. Did I hear wrongly? Is there anyone who dares to make you suffer? Is he tired of living? Chapter 33-37. Long Yanwei shook his head helplessly. If I was cheated by the palace master, then so be it. I've already gotten used to it. Not cheated by the palace master? Then who cheated you? There aren't many people in this Penglai Palace who can cheat you. Yizihua's eyes flashed with interest. He had known Long Yanwei for so long. Other than the palace master, who could usually dig some things out of him, ordinary people really couldn't do it. After all, with Long Yanwei's identity, it was impossible for the other party to use force to suppress others. Sigh. This time I've really suffered a huge loss. I was cheated by those 4 little fellows. Long Yanwei spread out his hands. He said frankly, the moment these words came out, Yizihua couldn't help but be stunned. He said, You're talking about the 4 little fellows that you just recruited? That's right. It's them. What did they cheat you of? Demon pet egg? Long Yanwei nodded. That's right. It's a demon pet egg. Yizihua smiled faintly. He said, Cheating you of a demon pet egg is indeed a huge price. However, those 4 little fellows all have a bright future. 2 of them are even inheritors of the blood-ground abyss. I feel that the possibility of them becoming inner palace disciples in the future is very high. Just treat it as a reward for them in advance. There's no need to be so worried. In any case, you can still take out a demon pet egg. It's not a big problem. Looking at Yizihua's matter-of-fact appearance, the helplessness in Long Yanwei's heart grew. It's not 1 demon pet egg. It's 3 demon pet eggs. If it was just 1 demon pet egg, I wouldn't have such an expression right now. Following Long Yanwei's words, Yizihua couldn't help but be startled. He looked at Long Yanwei in astonishment. He wondered if he had heard wrongly. What did you say? 3 demon pet eggs? I didn't hear wrongly, right? Long Yanwei shook his head. You didn't hear wrongly. It's 3 demon pet eggs. Damn. Izihua couldn't help but ridicule. Are you kidding me? In order to recruit the 4 little fellows back, you paid the price of 3 demon pet eggs? This price is too big. Do you really think so highly of them? As he spoke, Izihua couldn't help but shake his head. That's not right. For a miser like you, it would take half a day for the palace master to come here and dig out a single demon pet egg. How could you possibly agree to take out 3 demon pet eggs in one go? Sigh, these are all tricks. Speaking of which, it's my fault for not being careful with my words. Long Yanwei waved his hand. Forget it. Since things have come to this, I won't say anything more. However, Izihua's interest was piqued, and he said, Tell me about it. It's not easy to encounter such a situation, so I have to understand how you suffered such a loss. Facing Izihua's stubbornness, Long Yanwei had no choice but to tell Izihua about how he recruited Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. After hearing all this, Izihua was shocked, but at the same time, he was also very interested in Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. Haha, you Master Long personally went to recruit a cultivator but was rejected. If this news were to spread, it would be unbelievable. Hahaha. Izihua couldn't help but laugh out loud. Just thinking about Long Yanwei's expression when he was rejected, he felt that it must be extremely interesting. Looking at Izihua's expression, Long Yanwei couldn't help but roll his eyes. This was the most helpless thing about meeting a newcomer. No matter how you introduced yourself, the other party was completely clueless. Chapter 33-38. Izihua put away his joking expression, and a trace of seriousness emerged on his face. One person contracting 3 demonic beasts, this was incredible news. If every cultivator could contract a few demonic beasts, then their battle prowess would be greatly enhanced. In other words, if someone wanted to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang, then not only would they have to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang alone, they would also have to deal with her 3 extremely terrifying contracted beasts. Aside from group battles, who could beat Bailey Hongzhuang in a duel? Long Yanwei nodded. I also feel that this point is really hard to fathom, but when I looked at the contracted totems of the 3 contracted beasts, they really are exactly the same. That's strange. I've never heard of such a strange thing. Izihua frowned. Has such a thing happened in the history of the Shengxian continent? I've checked the ancient records, but there doesn't seem to be such a record. I can't tell how Bailey Hongzhuang did it. At this point, Long Yanwei seemed to have forgotten that he had been tricked, and his eyes flashed with a strong light of interest. He was very interested in studying this kind of thing that was beyond the scope of understanding. Looking at Long Yanwei like this, Izihua couldn't help but laugh. Don't you always say that there's nothing new? Now that so many new things have appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang, isn't it just right for you to study? If she leaves, you won't be able to continue to understand these things. So if you suffer this loss, then so be it. At most, I'll accompany you to look for newborn beasts in a few days. That's what you said. You'll accompany me in a few days. Long Yanwei's face suddenly revealed a smile, sweeping away the haze from before. It was precisely because of Izihua's words that he decided to suffer this loss. Although the price he had to pay was a bit high, the benefits he wanted were also the same. After Li Shengkai sent Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 to their residence, he returned to his own residence. On the way, there were many people who knew Li Shengkai who stopped him. Li Shengkai, where did those 4 guys come from? Were they recruited by some master? The faces of all the cultivators flashed with excitement. Now was not the time for Penglai Palace to recruit new people. So most of the cultivators who came at this time were recruited by the higher-ups of Penglai Palace. Everyone paid the most attention to such cultivators on a daily basis. They were recruited by Master Long. Li Shengkai told the truth. As soon as Li Shengkai finished speaking, the expressions of all the cultivators changed. Their faces were filled with shock. Master Long? They were actually recruited by Master Long? How is this possible? I have been in the Penglai Palace for so long, But this is the first time I have heard of Master Long actively recruiting cultivators. Li Shengkai, did you make a mistake? Seeing everyone's doubtful expressions, Li Shengkai could not help but say, "Why would I lie to you about this? I just happened to go to Master Long's place. When Master Long saw me, he said that he had recruited 4 cultivators, and asked me to report to him." Seeing Li Shengkai's serious expression, and that he didn't seem to be joking at all, everyone's expressions couldn't help but change. Chapter 33-39. Since they were recruited by Master Long, I'm afraid their strength is not simple. Maybe they have an extraordinary background. After all, there are very few people who can make Master Long show up. The cultivators who were originally very disdainful of Bailey Hongzhuang, and the other 3 gradually changed their minds. With Master Long as their backer, they were already not someone they could afford to provoke. So, you should have gained a lot of benefits from them, right? Everyone looked at Li Shengkai curiously. In their Penglai Palace, no matter who they asked for help, they would have to pay a certain price. This was also the reason why everyone was very willing to help. Otherwise, everyone would be very busy. Who would be interested in helping you? Hearing this question, Li Shengkai's expression suddenly collapsed. Don't mention it. I also think that these guys should be worth a lot. I didn't expect them to only say thank you to me. There was no substantial gratitude. I'm really speechless. Today's trip was completely in vain. Thinking of the matter-of-fact expressions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, Li Shengkai was furious. Although they could receive cultivation resources every month when they cultivated in Penglai Palace, it was still far from enough for them. The competition for resources was always the fiercest. Originally, he thought that it was a good job for Master Long to let him bring these 4 people to report. No matter what, he would have a good harvest. He did not expect that he would spend so much effort to introduce so many things to them, and personally send them to building number 5. In the end, he only got a word of gratitude. What was the use of gratitude? What he needed was an actual thank you, not a verbal thank you, okay? As Li Shengkai's voice fell, everyone could not help but be stunned again. Their expressions suddenly became interesting. Many people even laughed at him without giving him any face. They are cultivators recruited by Master Long. Why would they need to give you substantial gratitude? Maybe they think that it's already an honor for you to serve them, haha. I thought you would be able to gain something this time. I didn't expect it to be all for naught. What a waste of effort. That's not necessarily true. Maybe these people don't know the rules of our Penglai Palace, so they made such a joke. The disciples of the outer hall spoke one after another, each with different opinions. Li Shengkai waved his hand. He had long lost interest in this reason. Consider it my bad luck today, and a waste of time. Don't ask me anything. I don't know anything about them. I'll be leaving first. As soon as he finished speaking, Li Shengkai left with a gloomy face. He had been smiling for so long today, but he did not expect this ending. It really made him feel helpless. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had just familiarized themselves with their new residence, and were immersed in satisfaction. They didn't know that they had become the subject of everyone's discussion, and they also didn't know about the blunder they had made. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others sat together, and when Xiren couldn't help but ask. Hearing this, the 4 of them looked at each other. None of them had a definite answer because no matter if it was staying here or going to the Demon Refining Tower, they were both good choices. Chapter 33-40. Listening to Bewitching's suggestion, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 also took out manuals from their Qianquan bags. Li Shengkai introduced to them a lot of things to pay attention to when interacting with fellow disciples in the outer hall. However, he did not mention how to cultivate in the Penglai Palace, and how the outer hall could help cultivators. Therefore, they did not know how the outer hall disciples usually cultivated. If it was just to stay in the house and cultivate in seclusion, it was obviously meaningless. Instead, they might as well go to the cultivation area of the Magic Refining Tower to cultivate. Not only could they improve their cultivation quickly there, but they could also save a lot of time. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three finished reading the contents of the manual, they also had a certain understanding of the outer hall. It turned out that the Penglai Palace also had a cultivation area that belonged to them, but this cultivation area also required a certain amount of merit points. In order to obtain merit points, cultivators needed to go to other islands to hunt monsters through the transmission array inside the Penglai Palace. As long as they brought back the gall bladder of the monster, they could go to the reporting hall to exchange for merit points. Using these merit points, cultivators would be able to cultivate in the cultivation area. Not only that, these merit points also represented the glory of the cultivator. Similarly, these merit points could also be traded, equivalent to the currency in the Penglai Palace. However, spirit stones could also achieve the same effect, but using spirit stones to enter the cultivation area to cultivate, the price was not ordinary. Therefore, most of the cultivators in the outer hall chose to go to the islands to hunt monsters to obtain merit points. After understanding all this, Bailey Hongzhuang's face showed a look of realization. I was wondering why many of the cultivators we saw before were injured. They must have come back from hunting monsters and are now recuperating. Bewitching nodded and said in a deep voice, "So, most of the disciples in the outer hall are only in 3 places. One is on the island outside, the second is recuperating in the residence, and the third is cultivating in the cultivation area. Actually, this kind of life isn't too different from our demon refining tower. The only difference is that one is fighting against monstrous beasts, while the other is fighting against cultivators." When Xiren spread out his hands and spoke of the similarities, Shangguan Yingying glanced at everyone and said, "Then what do you all think? In my opinion, we should stay in the Penglai Palace first, and consider leaving after we get the monster pet egg." Bewitching said slowly, "Since the difference between the Penglai Palace and the magic refining tower was not big, it was better to stay here first." Long Yanwei had already promised to choose a suitable contract beast for them. Presumably, it wouldn't take long before it would be delivered to their hands. Listening to Bewitching's words, Xiren agreed. "That's decided then. I wonder how long it will take for me to receive news from Master Long. I'm really looking forward to having a contract beast." She had been looking forward to this day. She had been looking forward to Bewitching's. And Hongzhuang D and N and Bewitching's S. Beidou B. In the next few days, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others have been cultivating in seclusion in the house. In fact, they were all cultivating in the ocean world. Chapter 3341. Ever since the battle with Gao Hanchun, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 found that their fighting strength still needed to be improved. If it wasn't for the poison in Bailey Hongzhuang's body, they would have already been defeated when they fought with Gao Hanchun. It was just a slight difference, and the winner was the king while the loser was the bandit. Speaking of which, their victory in this battle also had an element of luck. However, this kind of luck did not appear every time. The most important thing was to improve their own strength. While Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching had this kind of feeling, Xiren and Shangguan Yingying felt it even more deeply. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching had the inheritance of the blood refining tower, and the blood chi field could directly help them improve their cultivation. Therefore, although they both had a cultivation of the 5th level of the purple realm, there was a big gap in their fighting strength. If their strength could also increase explosively in the previous battle, then they wouldn't be in such a predicament. The biggest pressure fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching. This was not what they wanted to see. Therefore, when Xiren and Shangguan Yingying had made up their minds to improve this, under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching found that Xiren and Shangguan Yingying often stayed together to cultivate, but they didn't know what Xiren and Shangguan Yingying were cultivating. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching asked, Xiren always smiled and said it was a secret weapon. As they drifted in the ocean world for a long time, they also began to see the existence of islands. Because Xiren and Shangguan Yingying both needed a place to cultivate, they simply stayed on this island for a period of time. Every time Xiren and Shangguan Yingying finished cultivating, they had an exhausted look on their faces. It was obvious that the cultivation was extremely difficult. In this regard, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were also puzzled. They did not understand what the two of them were cultivating to be able to exhaust themselves every time. It was truly puzzling. I've noticed that Yingying has been unusually tired every day. Even the color on her face has faded quite a bit. I wonder what they're cultivating. It's really too tiring. Bailey Hongzhuang's clear eyes revealed a faint look of concern. She didn't care what secret weapon Xiren and Shangguan Yingying were cultivating. She just felt that if this continued, their bodies might not be able to take it. Xiren and the others should have their own plans. Since they have been so insistent, they must have their own reasons. The only thing we can do is to support them. Di Beichen had a gentle smile on his face. He knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was sincerely concerned about Xiren, but he also knew that Xiren would not do something without a reason. Since they had chosen to do this, it proved that they felt that this was the right choice. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. I still have some pills that can replenish blood and qi. I'll give them to them later. It should be of some help. My wife is so understanding. Di Beichen hugged Bailey Hongzhuang dotingly. It's good that the two of them are busy cultivating on the other side of the island every day. It gives us some time to spend alone. Hearing Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but chuckle. Her gaze fell on the corpse of the monster they had just killed. This kind of scene doesn't seem to be very harmonious with enjoying some alone time, does it? Chapter 3342. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were wholeheartedly cultivating in the ocean world, their story gradually spread in the Punglai Palace. There were many cultivators in the Punglai Palace, so it was not difficult to investigate some things. Not to mention that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's battle was not far from the Punglai Palace, and there were many cultivators watching. Therefore, as long as someone asked around, they would be able to know the truth. These four new disciples are not big shots with backgrounds. You don't have to guess blindly. They are just four newcomers who came to the Punglai Island not long ago. Since they are just ordinary newcomers, how could they be recruited by Master Long? Master Long's vision is extraordinarily high. They killed the sect master of the heaven-shaking faction in the previous battle, and two of them obtained the inheritance of the Bloodground Abyss. A cultivator who knew the truth slowly explained the situation. As soon as these words came out, many disciples showed a look of realization. Recently, this news had been spreading in the Punglai Island. Two inheritors of the Bloodground Abyss appeared at once. This was not something that could be easily seen. Moreover, they defeated the sect master of the heaven-shaking faction. From that day onwards, the heaven-shaking faction completely disappeared from the Punglai Island. How could people not be shocked? I also heard about this matter, but as far as I know, it was a group of 3 men and 1 woman. The newcomers are 2 men and 2 women. It doesn't seem right, right? You don't know this. The 3 men and 1 woman from before were just their disguise. I heard this news from Master Long's subordinates. It is absolutely true. In addition, there is an even more shocking news, but Master Long's subordinates did not let me say it. Listening to this cultivator's deliberately mystifying words, the curiosity of the Outer Palace disciples was almost ignited. Master Long's sudden recruitment of 4 rookies filled everyone with suspicion. They felt that there might be some other reason behind this, but no one knew what it was. At this moment, there was finally someone who knew the inside story, so they naturally did not want to let go. Quickly tell us, what is the more shocking news? If you want to hear it, you have to pay something. Looking at the other party's appearance, everyone felt helpless and immediately took out spirit stones from their arms. Compared to some spirit stones, they were more interested in the inside story. I heard that Master Long agreed to give them 3 monster eggs, and they are monster eggs that are suitable for their cultivation, not low-level monster eggs. As the cultivator's voice fell, everyone present could not help but be dumbfounded. Their faces were filled with shock, and even more so, they were in disbelief. Don't joke around. That's impossible. 3 monster eggs? Unless Master Long's brain was squeezed by a door, how could he agree to such a condition? Chapter 3343. In the face of this person's solemn vow, everyone was still skeptical, because this news was too explosive. Isn't it only possible to obtain a demon pet egg from Master Long by becoming an inner palace disciple? Outer palace disciples simply don't have the possibility to obtain it. That's right. Even if it's an inner palace disciple, not everyone can obtain a demon pet egg, unless it's someone with extremely outstanding strength. These 4 people have only just arrived at Punglai Island. What ability do they have to make Master Long pay such a price? Your news is simply too unconvincing. If it was anyone else, they would find it hard to believe. Everyone looked at each other. This news was like someone telling them that all the outer palace disciples of Punglai Palace could directly become inner palace disciples. It was like a fantasy story. It was hard to believe. I'm not sure what the reason is. However, this matter is indeed true. It's up to you to believe it or not. I've already taken your spirit stones. If I still say such nonsense, then wouldn't I be asking for trouble? A displeased expression appeared on the man's face. It wasn't easy for him to find out such explosive news. Originally, he thought that it would surprise everyone. He didn't expect that everyone would continuously doubt it. The result was very different from what he imagined. I do know that he does have an extremely good personal relationship with Master Long's subordinates. Presumably, he wouldn't use such a thing to deceive us. This wouldn't do him any good. At this time, another cultivator came out to help testify. Seeing this, everyone's expression couldn't help but gradually change. Their minds were constantly thinking about the possibility of this matter. If all of this was true, then things would be interesting. 3 demon pet eggs. That was a treasure that anyone would be jealous of. A demon pet egg that could match with a Purple Realm 5th level cultivation. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that this was truly worth tens of thousands of gold. In the entire Punglai Island, other than Master Long who could take it out, no one else could. In other words, this was a treasure that had a price but no market. Even if you really took out a lot of spirit stones to exchange for it, with Master Long's wealth, he wouldn't even put this money in his eyes. This was the most tragic part. If it was just for money, it was still possible for everyone to put their lives on the line. However, if it was about favors or other aspects, it would be even more difficult. As far as I know, even if the palace master wants to get a high-level monster pet egg from Master Long, it will take a lot of effort. These 4 newcomers just came to Punglai Island. What ability do they have to make Master Long make such a decision? For a moment, everyone looked at each other. This was too difficult for them to understand. However, even more cultivators were still in disbelief, because Master Long would not be so generous. However, this suspicion was completely dispelled after Master Long's subordinate admitted it himself. Ever since that person revealed this news, almost everyone with some ability tried to find Master Long's subordinates to ask about this matter again and again. They proposed all kinds of tempting conditions, and finally managed to pry open the other party's mouth. As expected, all of this was actually real. The entire outer hall was in an uproar when this news was released. Master Long actually gave out 3 demon pet eggs in one go. And they were even high-level demon pet eggs. Chapter 3344. Many people were waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 to come out. They wanted to know what was going on from Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, and how they got Master Long to agree to give out 3 demon pet eggs. However, since the day Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 reported, they had been staying in the house and had never appeared. Even if someone knocked on the door, there was no response. If it wasn't for the fact that everyone saw them enter the house and never come out, everyone would have thought that they had gone out. Almost every day, there were cultivators who didn't believe it and knocked on the door, but the result was the same. The other party didn't pay any attention to them. Everyone was already jealous of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3's treatment. Now that they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 being so arrogant and ignoring everyone's attitude, they also felt a strong displeasure in their hearts. They only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 had the protection of Master Long. So they thought highly of themselves and looked down on the other cultivators in the outer palace. When Li Shengkai found out that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had obtained such great benefits from Master Long, he couldn't help but be shocked. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's position in Master Long's heart was really not ordinary. He also began to feel a little lucky that he didn't directly fall out with Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. However, the jealousy in his heart was even stronger than the other cultivators. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had already obtained so many benefits from Master Long. In the end, they didn't even give him any benefits. It was really too stingy. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were wholeheartedly cultivating in the ocean world. They didn't know that so many things had happened when they were in seclusion. They only wanted to hunt demon beasts because the demon beasts in the ocean world also had the guts. It was proven that as long as the demon beast's cultivation reached the purple realm, it would have the guts. According to their judgment, there wasn't much difference between this essence gallbladder and the essence gallbladder of the outside world, but there were some differences between the demon crystals. The demonic crystals naturally went into White Lion's stomach. Its cultivation method was far from what Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could compare with. Since White Lion's cultivation could be improved through this method, they naturally hoped that White Lion's strength would increase as much as possible. This would also increase their overall strength. Merit points were extremely important in the Prunglai Palace. They had already made plans. After they obtained the demon pet egg from Long Yanwei, they would go through the teleportation array to hunt demon beasts. In the process of hunting demonic beasts, no one would pay attention to how many demonic beasts you had killed. They could have put the primordial gall stones they had obtained from the oceanic world into it. To them, the essence gallbladder had the same function as spirit stones. However, the merit points that could be exchanged for using essence gallbladders were much more valuable than spirit stones. Therefore, in the process of hunting demonic beasts, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three spared no effort. With the island as the center, they hunted demonic beasts for a day and cultivated for another day. In this process, the primordial gall stones in their bodies were constantly gathering. Since Bewitching's physique had completely changed, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two discovered the power of this physique in cultivation. Obviously, the four of them were all sitting together cultivating, but the primordial gall stones in the air were almost all attracted by Bewitching and continuously poured into Bewitching's body. Chapter 3345. After cultivating in the ocean world for several days, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three felt that the time was not short. Only then did they decide to leave the ocean world. After all, before they entered the ocean world, Long Yanwei had already told them that it would take a certain amount of time to choose the demon pet eggs. He told them to come find him after 10 days. If Long Yanwei had already helped them choose a suitable contract beast, Long Yanwei would send someone to inform them after 10 days. If not, then they would continue to wait for the news. In this regard, according to Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's judgment, Long Yanwei's demon pet eggs were probably placed in another place. Otherwise it wouldn't take so long. However, after thinking about it carefully, he felt that Long Yanwei's arrangement was very correct. As the only contract master in the Prunglai Palace, Long Yanwei's reputation and status were extremely resounding. The demon pet eggs were extremely precious treasures. If they were placed in his residence, then some of the large forces might directly launch a sneak attack. Although the vast majority of people did not have such courage, for example, the Crimson Moon sect would not be afraid. If they were really ambushed, then the loss would be unimaginably huge. Therefore, Long Yanwei must have hidden these demon pet eggs in an extremely hidden and safe place. Today happened to be the 10th day. In other words, they had been cultivating in the ocean world for an entire month. After exiting the cultivation state, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three opened the door. They wanted to see if Long Yanwei had sent anyone to inform them today. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three opened the door, they discovered that many cultivators' gazes had landed on them. And these gazes were all somewhat unfriendly. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but frown. His heart was filled with doubts. When they first came to the Punlai Palace, there were also many people sizing them up. However, at that time, although these gazes were filled with curiosity, there were not many unfriendly gazes. They had only been in seclusion for a short 10 days. What happened to make everyone have such a change? Why do I feel that everyone's gazes don't seem to be too friendly? Shang Guaninging looked at the cultivators around them and keenly discovered that these gazes were unusual. She could not help but feel puzzled. You're not the only one who feels this way. I feel the same way. When Xiren nodded in agreement. We've been in closed-door cultivation for the past few days. We haven't done anything that would incur the wrath of the heavens. Beichen's eyes flashed with a pondering light. His face quietly became a bit heavier. He said, could it be that the news of us getting the demon pet egg from Master Long spread out? Other than this piece of news, he couldn't think of anything else that could make everyone feel this way about them. Jealousy was an emotion that everyone would have, and the 3 demon pet eggs were enough to make all the disciples jealous. Once this news spread out, it wouldn't be strange for everyone to reveal such an expression. Following Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two's expressions turned grave. If that was really the case, then the situation would be very bad. Chapter 3346. No matter what, Long Yanwei had suffered a loss in this matter. With Long Yanwei's identity, he would not take the initiative to say this kind of thing, because it would be very embarrassing for him. As for the 4 of them, that was even more impossible. From the beginning to the end, they had never told anyone about this matter. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were thinking about what had happened, the mocking voices of other cultivators were heard. I thought these 4 guys were Ninja Turtles. They stayed in the house for so many days without any signs of coming out. Now they're finally willing to come out. I don't know what's there to be arrogant about. I think they must have used some special method to confuse Master Long, to give them 3 demon pet eggs. Even so, there's no need to be so arrogant and ignore everyone's search. Now, this cultivator, who just came from the outside world, is really arrogant. He just came to the Punlai Palace, and he already doesn't put all of us in his eyes. Didn't you guys say that you don't know how they got Master Long to promise to give them the demon pet eggs? Look at their appearance. Maybe they're using their beauty to serve people. After all, other than their faces, there's nothing outstanding about them. Everyone's words were harsher than the previous one. The mocking voices continued to be heard. It was as if they wanted to belittle Bailey Hongzhuang and the others to the bottom. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, who didn't know what was going on, suddenly had an ugly expression on their faces after hearing such discussions. They had never thought that in just a short period of 10 days, this rumor had already developed to such an extent. Beichen, what you said is right. These guys really know about the demon pet eggs. Xiren's expression was ugly. He had lived for so many years. Which time did he not rely on his own true strength to come here? He was actually mocked by these guys as trash who had nothing but his face. This kind of words for any man was a complete insult. Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face had a bit of coldness. Everyone's mocking words were too much. However, she did not lose her mind because of everyone's sarcasm. At this time, the angrier you appear, the more you'll fall into the trap of others. These people were most likely waiting for them to take the initiative to find trouble. In this way, these people would definitely join the battle. Right now, they were in a situation where they were alone and without help. If this conflict was stirred up, the ones who would suffer in the end would only be them. I don't know how this news got out, but it seems that during our cultivation process, someone came to find us. We didn't hear it. They thought we were putting on airs, and didn't want to pay attention to it. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with wisdom. From the other side's few words of sarcasm, she could also hear some clues. Forget it, let's go back to the house. Let's wait in the house. They. Of them. Chapter 3347. You still say that these 4 people are geniuses? In my opinion, these 4 are useless cowards. Haha. After being ridiculed to this extent, they can only return to their rooms dejectedly. What a joke. I'm a little curious as to what the 4 of them are doing in the same room every day. Could it be that they're up to something shameful? Following this person's words, which were full of hidden meanings, the cultivators all burst into laughter. Inside the room, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 heard the mockery and provocation from outside, and their faces turned ashen. These damned bastards are getting more and more out of hand. Shangguan Yingying's pretty face was flushed red with anger. She had never been humiliated like this before, and this was simply unbearable. Can you still tolerate this? I can't take it anymore. As she spoke, Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but stand up, looking as if she was going to fight the cultivators outside to the death. Seeing Shangguan Yingying's actions, Xiren hurriedly stopped her. Yingying, calm down first. In this situation, being impulsive won't do you any good. But they're really too much, Shangguan Yingying said angrily. Xiren's expression was unusually serious, and he only gave Shangguan Yingying a look. Although Shangguan Yingying was filled with anger, she could only sit down obediently. Although she usually ridiculed Xiren, at this critical moment, she would listen to Xiren's arrangements. These bastards want to take advantage of this opportunity to anger us. Once we explode, they will have a reason to deal with us, so we can't give them any chance. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Shangguan Yingying with a serious expression, and her words were filled with persuasion. Shangguan Yingying frowned slightly. Isn't the outer hall not allowed to prevent cultivators from fighting? If they want to cause trouble for us, they can just come directly to us. Why do they have to go through so much trouble? Yingying, I'm afraid you've lost your mind from anger. Bewitching shook his head helplessly. They don't dare to do it themselves, but just provoke us verbally. Most likely, they are afraid of Master Long. After all, they don't know what kind of relationship we have with Master Long, so they don't dare to act rashly. However, if we are the ones who take the initiative to provoke them, then they don't need to bear any responsibility. It's all because we newcomers are too arrogant and don't know the rules. When Xiren nodded, I know you're angry. If the other party was only a few cultivators, I would definitely go out and beat them up without saying a word. But there are so many of them. If we attack, we'll be beaten up by the group. We can't do this kind of business where we're clearly at a disadvantage. He was also very angry, but now they were in the Punglai Palace. They were just new disciples and had no foundation here, so they had to be careful with every step they took. That's not all. Every move we make now will be related to Master Long. We have obtained so many benefits from him. We can't cause him trouble as soon as we arrive at Punglai Palace, right? These people can easily link us to Master Long and push our responsibility to Master Long. Chapter 3348. Shangguan Yingying, who was originally extremely furious, gradually calmed down when she saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 thinking so calmly. She was just blinded by anger and didn't think that there were so many things behind it. At this moment, after being reminded by Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2, she couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. If she had really impulsively provoked the conflict, then their current situation would be even worse. I seem to have been too impulsive. Shangguan Yingying was a bit ashamed. She didn't understand the things that everyone was able to understand. Instead, she needed everyone who was in anger to persuade her. Compared to them, her performance was too terrible. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, Yingying, you've been cultivating in the Cloud Sword sect before. This kind of dirty trick wouldn't be used on you at all. So it's normal that you didn't understand it for a while. Almost every cultivator here has been through many hardships. No matter if it's the methods that can be seen or not, they're all very good at using them. If you think too simply, it's easy to fall into their trap. You'll understand after you've seen more of them. This kind of thing required a certain amount of experience to be able to think clearly. The environment that Shangguan Yingying was in before didn't have these kinds of schemes, so she wasn't used to it for a while. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's comfort, Shangguan Yingying nodded. I'll try my best not to be impulsive in the future. It's a good thing that you all understand. Otherwise this situation would be really terrible. Seeing that Shangguan Yingying's state of mind had calmed down, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three started to discuss countermeasures. Although I don't know how the news got out, but it's already like this. There's no use for us to look for the reason. We have to think about what to do next. When Xiren scratched his head with one hand, originally, he only wanted to keep a low profile and cultivate in the outer hall. He didn't expect that in just a few days, things would escalate to such an extent. It was probably impossible for them to continue cultivating in a low profile. Right now, we have become the focus of everyone's attention. Did you guys notice earlier that the number of cultivators living nearby has obviously increased by a lot? Bewitching said in a low voice. His handsome face revealed a serious expression. This number was much more than the day they had arrived. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded lightly. I've also noticed this point. If I'm not wrong, these guys are most likely waiting for us to receive the demon pet eggs. Since the outer hall doesn't forbid fights, naturally, they won't forbid snatching either. We're just newcomers, and our strength doesn't pose any threat to them at all. Thus, they treat us as soft buns and want to bully us as they wish. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Bewitching and the others' faces darkened once again. As a result, they had to think of a way to protect the demon pet egg. Otherwise, as soon as they left Long Yanwei's place, these cultivators would already be impatient to come out and snatch it. What should we do now? These guys are eyeing us like tigers eyeing their prey. We have no way to escape. Shangguan Yingying's face became even uglier. After such an analysis, they were completely besieged. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.